How to unfuck your lust. Hey gents, welcome back to the channel where we dive into the deep and real stuff, the things that make us, break us, and shape us. Today's no different. We're talking about the little four-letter word that wields a lot of power: lust. It's a topic that many shy away from, but here we face the uncomfortable head on. And I'm going to drop some truth bombs about why giving into those lusty urges might be wrecking your relationships and what you can do to break free. First off, let's keep it real with you. I'm not just preaching, I've walked this road too. I used to have an unhealthy relationship with porn. From the age of 12, I had access to an iPod and endless porn abilities. On top of that, I had the saber-toothed Bluetooth amongst friends who were older than me and who would send around explicit content and watch it for fun in front of each other. Belonging to these groups meant partaking. It now doesn't surprise me. From the Australian Institute of Family Studies have found nearly half of children between the ages of 9 to 16 experience regular exposure to sexual images. Young males are more likely than females to deliberately seek out pornography and do so very frequently. But at the ripe, impressionable age of 13 to 14, I remember waiting for everyone to leave the house, and here's where it gets cheeky, to fester in the dark web. I remember the guilt, the embarrassment and roller coaster when I had to clean up before mum got home. And aside from that, the content was perverse and preyed upon sexualizing roles in the family. At this pivotal point in my life, I was still figuring out what was right and wrong. Yet without a developed conscience, I was in the trap of choosing wrong. It messed with my head, so much so it became a habit into my late teens, early 20s, and even into the first part of my bloody marriage. Yet it had me chasing shadows instead of real, meaningful connections, and deviated my desire and attention from my now wife. Before the missus, I could safely say at some point or another, I was part of the stat, being 1 in 3 men between the ages of 18 and 30 report having had no sex at all in the past year. We either get impatient or subscribe to the weirdly liberating feeling that encompasses the shame of enjoying private pleasure to a stranger on a screen. It's addicting. And as it stopped me facing my real fears of rejection, so it really gave me that convenient, gratifying temptation that we all seek. It wasn't until I decided to quit that I saw the chains I was in. Freeing myself wasn't easy, but it was honestly worth it. Lust really plays on the weak and our instincts. But do we know what lust really is? Let's define it. We aren't just talking about enjoying someone's good looks. Lust has a way of turning our admiration into an obsession, a hunger that wants to take selfishly and not share. Love, on the flip side, that's where you find joy in giving, in being there for someone else. Love is selfless. It requires presence and sacrifice that lust does not. It's natural to recognize beauty, and especially for men, heck, it's everywhere. But what do you do with that recognition? That's the game changer. You see, some brains out there like Freud, the Great, believed our desires are buried beneath layers of consciousness. An ego that is riding like a riding horse, tugging between the impulses of the id, the devil on the shoulder we call it, our instincts, and our superego, our moral self. This is the part of us which is always in perpetual arguments. And then there's Jung, who figured out that these urges are part of a shared collective psyche across humanity. And in a mad society that we know we're in that promotes urges, this can be a damaging folie à deux in French, also meaning madness for two, or in psychology better known as SDD, shared delusional disorder. And Eastern philosophies agree, like Taoism, they teach about balance, where every yin has its yang. We've got this inherent balance of light and dark inside of us, and lust's no exception. Ever heard the phrase, lead us not unto temptation? That's from the Lord's Prayer, reminding us that it's not just about avoiding evil, it's about understanding and controlling our own temptations. Scientifically, lust fires up our dopamine circuits. That's the instant gratification button inside. It's a fantastic feeling, sure, but it's a fleeting feeling and can leave our serotonin levels, the hormone that keeps us feeling stable, out to dry. Now we relatively understand that dark shadow within that we need to control. Now, how do we unfuck those cravings? It starts with some real self-discovery. Being untold no is its own kind of with damage. It's human nature to explore, but we also need to learn boundaries. That's how we build self-control and also respect. So first of all, identify the triggers of your lust. Does it leave you feeling more alone, ashamed, or just flat out bad about yourself? Those are signs it's time to make a change. But it's easier said than done. Acknowledge some trauma too. Lust may be compensating for an unmet need. Is it a form of self-neglect? Do you feel inherently unlovable? Was there a gap in your expectations of what love you needed and wanted from your parents, yet never got? Is it pent-up energy that's leaking into another pursuit? Are you simply lethargic, or are you, like me, deeply avoiding the pain of rejection or not feeling desirable enough? Are fears, spoken, written, and externalized? Stop them festering and building power within our hearts. By all means though, imagine yourself observing you writing in third person. Don't judge or build another shame spiral. Never being told no is also a trauma. Trauma is primarily the withdrawal of love. When a child tests boundaries, it's built in to expect guidance in a firm but loving manner. But when it is not given, it's just as traumatic in the long run. It deprives the child from developmental stages to go through. When a no is non-existent, there is never a limit. So discover the trauma story or the shame story. What's the one part of you don't want anyone to know? And is there time to create a new order within? Start your detox. This is your personal rehab from harmful habits. Stumbles are part of the journey. What matters most is that you keep moving forward. Like all addictions, relapse is common. Be slow in your steps and acknowledge you'll be grieving the past you as well. A multitude of emotions. Constantly. Then there's confession. Find someone you trust and lay it all out there. Healing starts when you stop hiding and are held in the presence of empathy. And a little story for you. In the early parts of my marriage, I did confess that I did watch a bit of porn, and my wife helped me through that scenario, and I didn't own that shame that I held within. Another scenario is that I had a private health issue that I felt pretty ashamed about. Until I shared with a close friend later, I found that they also experienced the very same thing. And in that vulnerability, our bond grew stronger, my friend and my wife. And as did the noose of the shame feel a lot weaker. There's a saying that goes around, shame gets stronger in silence, but becomes a beatable beast when shared. Just as we identified earlier, if Jungian group psychology is a thing, then collective healing is when we are witnessed in the presence of one another working through our shit. I mean, gosh, have you ever had a warm hug from someone you love? Think about that kind of co-regulation. But be cautious not to dump. Save people, save people. Hurt people, hurt people. So hold caution. I advocate for progressive vulnerability disclosure with someone safe. Start with something that doesn't feel too throat-tickeningly hard to say, and be brief. If the person shows signs of reciprocation or empathic listening, feel out progress in being more vulnerable then. And empathic listening is mirroring, genuinely leaning in. Don't just rely on others though, we don't want to become codependent. Bring your internal higher self into the conversation. And if you're spiritual, bring your faith into the mix. Get your core values front and center. Let them be your guide. I also believe that we can create an inner tyrant inside. We may find the easy route out to lazily complying to an inner tyrant that orders, do as I say now. There is no inner no. This could be because we've had authoritarian parents, set a high perfectionistic standard inside ourselves, or find joy in self-sabotage. Patterns that can be loved away by our redeeming Jesus within. Remember the movies or stories that have the hero's journey and popular protagonist. They always have a fall, yet get back up, are honourable, and don't take vengeance unless necessary. Your inner tyrant is the evil you slay, but your past is the behavior in which you forgive. And there was a great movie called The Planet of the Apes, and Caesar is a fantastic hero protagonist that shows this. He was blind to the betrayal of someone called Koba within his ape tribe, who shot him, made the entire tribe go against their values and will. And while his great nature allowed him to forgive and forget many times across the movie, there was a limit to what evil could be carried out. So we need to know what limit of evil that we can inherently feel play out in our lives until we say no. There was a forgiveness of his own blindness too. He took the leader role again and just thought, okay, I made a mistake, but I scrub back up, move on, and allow the values of the tribe, allow Jesus's values of presence and sacrifice, of humility, of integrity and honorability lead and guide the way. He then took responsibility for what happens next, reinstated himself as leader, and then made amends in terms of how they move forward. Again, sometimes when we've done wrong, it does take sucking it up. We can't run away from it. We need to take ownership, and it's going to be uncomfortable in the short term, but you're going to grow the muscle of integrity in the long term, which is a massive part of your character and is the biggest investment you can ever have, both in business, relationships. Integrity compounds. The next step, I would say, is show compassion to both yourself and others caught in the same struggle. And have compassion for those in the industry that you lust over. See their struggle and think, oh, that guiltiness is a healthy emotion that's teaching us that something feels off. That gut feeling that's feeling like butterflies or a sinking feeling is a sign that something is against your natural inner humanness. And tuning into compassion and out of selfishness shows that we are part of something bigger than ourselves and that we're thinking of others before ourselves. And so doing that allows us to take reign of our actions and not let them run away. And we should have compassion for people who are seeking the validation or seeking to disrupt or sabotage a good thing that you have. Some people are literally hell-bent on creating chaos in the world and find satisfaction in doing so. These are the malevolent types. In psychology, they're the sadists. They are the types that really find Schadenfreude to be their core principle. And that's just the idea of finding satisfaction in someone else's misfortune. People literally ride a runaway train into other people's purity, into other people's order, and love to create a bit of chaos because their life isn't in order. And it's a very innate human instinct to destroy or cut down or shoot down someone else who's doing well to make themselves feel better. People do this through seduction and manipulation, which we'll get to in a second, and understanding how you're being manipulated is the key to getting out of your behaviors of lust, which could be very unconscious. And this leads me to the point, every time we say no, we're cutting off demand from an industry or people that thrives on our weakness. There's an illusion of control in the cycle of lust. Are we addicted to control, ownership, and pain? Where can we bring more vulnerability into the mix, let our guard down, and begin trusting in those around us? A more wholesome source of fulfillment will help here, and also seeing each other as comrades and not just threats. It's crucial to redefine how you experience beauty too. It's not just about exterior beauty, it's about a deeper connection and appreciation that goes beyond the surface. Now, as we brushed on before, let's talk about boundaries, guys. These are non-negotiable. Social media, for example, there's a way to do so. Learn to hit that not interested button real quick. It will clean up your algorithm and feed. Don't feed the beast itself. Become the man that lust can't touch. Know your worth and the games that are played. I highly recommend the books like Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. You'll find out that there are characters people play and their tactics are definitely used to get their own way, even if they consciously don't know about it. Lust preys on the naive, so get out of naivety. Also, redirect that energy. Got a surge of masculine drive? Channel it into something that makes you proud, something positive and concrete. Rid dark words also in your vocabulary and language. Get rid. Audit your speech. Just like a YouTube Explore page, your brain is like an algorithm which is seeking a daisy chain of information to support the forethought. So both in a practical sense, clean up with the not interested on your feeds and also clear history, and be cautious about what interests keep popping up. Do so through the power of catching your runaway thought train. Esther Perel, a prestigious writer in the relational space, in her book Mating in Captivity, believes it's not about eradicating the lustful part of us, it's about integrating it into a safe and secure relationship. But the very existence of a naughty fantasy is that it isn't accepted in the confines of society. So be cautious introducing this, appreciating your woman as she is right now, treating her body as sacred, and communicating what you'd like to sexually explore is a best next step. It's about mixing things up in the bedroom or wherever things get steamy. Communication with your partner is key, and it's a cliche but true. It's not about eliminating your desires, it's about expressing them in a way that brings you two closer and not further apart. It's about finding your version of the zone of optimal discomfort. Get familiar with your lust language too. The famous quote goes, "Be the warrior in the garden, not the gardener in the war." Integrate your knowledge, be fierce and strong, but understand how to refrain it. Not the other way around, where its power controls you. In The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene once more, there are 9 characters that can be alluring and demand your lusty attention. The charismatic is the first one. Naturally, it captivates the attention of the room. The rake, this is the hyper-masculine men, which are intriguing. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the siren, hyper-feminine. Then we have the star, playing their fame, their trinkets and their accolades to create a superiority complex amongst the inferior. Then we have the coquette, the wordsmith. Then we have the dandy, which breaks the norms, redefines society, and is super rebellious. The ideal lover is next, everything you imagine from the movies. The natural, who's the innocent one, reminding us of our lost childhood. And then you got the charmer, we all know one, you can't help but like them. They all play on our innate desire to be seen, entertained, thrilled, and moved. Learn how to spot, deflect, and avoid these characters as well, but also learn to play with it without letting it control you or hurt those you care about. And just for me and my wife is definitely the natural. She reminded me of the innocence, the purity of life, and that really allowed me to move towards her. On the opposite, I'm more the charismatic and charming, and I need to understand when that is played as a gameplay and not the genuine me. But to know that these are parts of you and not to shame them away and not to denigrate from your character, it plays to know your own seduction plays, to understand them when they're played against you. So which one do you gravitate to most? When is it acceptable? How can you play with this part of you rather than just simply condemn it? Because condemning it just makes it want to rebel stronger. As you know, we learn and understand everything clearer and quicker when we teach others, and embodying it is exactly the same. And ultimately, the question you need to ask yourself is, when are the consequences for your actions too much to bear? Has it stolen good relationships from you, led to STDs that are irreversible, a self-hate that is hard to bear? This is a surefire sign that the alternative to making a change is much more painful. Now that's all I have for today, and it's a deep topic that can go on forever, but I hope it's been insightful and helpful. This conversation doesn't just stop here though. If you want to keep unpacking this and unpacking your inner world, I've got something that can help guide you further, my How to Not Lose Her guide. This dives into deeper shadow work and vulnerability. It's a hand-holding journey to a better understanding of your inner world. Check it out, the link's in the video description below. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss out on more content just like this. We're building a community here. I know it's young and vibrant, a place where we can challenge each other to grow and become the men we're meant to be. Thank you for tuning in and being brave enough to tackle a topic that can truly transform the way you live and love. Remember, respect for yourself translates to respect for others. Strive for progress, not perfection, and the rest will follow. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep striving, keep growing, and never stop evolving, my friend.